I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? What brings you here?
Just coming to visit, see what it's all about.
And it's just picked this building on the whole street? Yeah? Well, I hope you chose wisely. What else here first time? Anybody? Yeah? What brings you here?
My friend invited me.
Yeah? What did your friend say to you to get you here?
She said you look really stressed recently. No.
Well, it's funny you say that because normally that's when people like tell you, hey, you should come to this. It's kind of what they're saying to you, whether they say it directly or not. So the honesty is always appreciated, you know. That's how we all end up here pretty much, you know. Anger, stress, anxiety, sadness, or depression, it gets you here. Nobody, for the most part, happy and peaceful and cruising through their day ends up at places like this. So welcome to the madness, you know, regardless of what it took to get you here. Anybody else, first time, want to share why? For those of you who keep coming back, why show up?
Good question.
I try to ask good questions. That's why I sit here. Why do you show up? Say again?
We're stressed too.
You're stressed also? Yes. What else? Why show up?
Need the peace.
Need the peace?
I like to meditate with a group.
Mm-hmm. Meditate with the group. What else?
I want to learn something new, like be part of something new, a different community.
Yeah, nice.
I enjoy your snark.
I'm a smart ass. Just comes for the jokes.
I always leave with more questions, and I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's as I've always said, you probably heard me say many times, you know, my first teacher, she always said, you know, when you ask questions, don't look for answers, just begin to change your questions. And I found that to be really, I think, inspiring because it kept me from it pulled me out of a place where I thought there was an answer to every single question. And so with this practice, I often early on thought, okay, well, here's the problem, I need a solution, here's the question, I need the answer. And to me, at that time, that meant that if you had an answer, problem solved. But we probably know by now life isn't that simple. So as you're trying to figure out things about yourself and the world around you, you're constantly asking, in theory, with this practice, you're constantly asking questions. But these questions ultimately really just become, in many ways, questions about yourself. And, you know, in some regard, it's a question, but it's also just an awareness. It's just beginning to pay a greater sense or level of attention to why we think and say and do what we think and say and do. And that's not always pleasant, that's not always fun, but the more we pay attention to our thoughts and our words and our actions, that begins to kind of open up our minds and our hearts to ourselves and then ideally to the world around us. So, yeah, whatever, you know, for whatever reason you end up here, I think it's always important to just check in with that every so often, you know, to remind yourself why you initially stumbled into this practice, whether it's day 1 or 2 or whether it's 20 years in. And I think always to remember that as life goes, it's going to continue to stay complicated and challenging, right? Meditation in Buddhism doesn't solve things. All your problems aren't going to go away just because you do this stuff for 6 months. You know, if anything, you'll just start to see more layers and layers and layers of challenges and conflict. So this practice helps you become aware of that and then how to face it. But it takes time, and good thing is it requires patience, which I know all of you have, so you should be fine. To those joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello as you are. We'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. For those who might be new, nothing's going to happen to you. All right, you're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind races all day long. It's not going to shut off. You won't think nothing. You're not trying to go blank. Your mind will continue to race. I'll say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought or bring you back to the present moment. Don't expect anything from this practice. We're just going to sit and breathe. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight. Relaxing the shoulders, hands are on the knees or on the lap, whatever's comfortable. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Again, most important from this practice, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. Starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention. Focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, and no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And when ready, slowly opening the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize how you feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless where you come from, or what you believe in, or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation and Buddhism doesn't fix that. It helps you become aware of your life that is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so you can then begin to make changes in your life. Meditation, Buddhist practice, is simply learning to be with each moment as it arises and responding to each moment as it arises with loving kindness, compassion. It's really simple. It's not complicated. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do in each moment. And always coming back to that. Your thoughts, your words, your actions. And this is very difficult for most people. Because most people who struggle and are challenged with life and things going on around them want to point fingers, want to blame. But this is not that. This practice is your thoughts, your words, your actions. And how that impacts your life and the life of those around you. People keep wanting to make this practice about other people and other places and other things. That's not what this is. This is working on your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And that never changes. It's been the same message, same teaching for 2,500 years. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate so many things around us, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that, so much time focused on others. And we set that down and we work on taking care of ourselves. Life changes. And then when you respond to others, you're able to respond to others in a kinder, gentler, more compassionate way. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. We'll use the rest of our brief time this evening for questions. And to those who are joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. There's a chat box. Feel free to say hello as you are. If you have any questions, you can put them there. I'll do my best to respond. So we'll open up to questions.
I have a question. So, I'm not new to mindfulness, but I am new to Buddhism. And so, how can I learn more about what, like Buddhism, not just the mindfulness part of it?
Sure. No, the question, just for those virtually didn't hear it, you said you're not new to mindfulness, just new to Buddhism. How can you learn more about Buddhism, not just the mindfulness part of it? You know where mindfulness comes from?
Yes.
Where?
Buddhism.
Yeah. I just want to get that out of the way first.
I mean, just for example,
No, I know.
I
got you.
And you did the thing.
I got you.
What does that mean?
That means
all of
nothing. That will do you no good. I've heard this question 1,000 times, so work with me here. All right, what's your name? Katya. I just like to know their names before I pick on people, So let me just start, just to give a little background for those who are not aware, don't know it. So the mindfulness movement, which really in this culture, Western world, we credit to Jon Kabat-Zinn. He created MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. He's a medical professional. He's a brilliant man, Zen practitioner. His koan was, that his Zen master gave him was, what is it you can do with this one life that nobody else can do? And so he created mindfulness-based stress reduction. And he has but so many people in the Western world, millions and millions of people all over the world that have no interest in Buddhism, doing meditation and practicing mindfulness. Wonderful. But here's the catch, and this is really what your question is about. Karma Lekshi Soma was a Tibetan Buddhist nun for 50 years, wonderful professor, retired recently from USD. She used to say that you can mindfully rob a bank. You can mindfully murder someone. Mindfulness without moral and ethical behavior only gets you so far. Right? I understand your question was like, what was all that stuff doing, as if that's Buddhism. That is just cultural influence that has nothing to do with Buddhist teachings. I'll probably answer your question about what that was, but that's not going to help your life. What's going to help your life is understanding the fundamental core basic teachings of the Buddha, which are, the first thing he said is the Four Noble Truths. Life is filled with suffering. The word is dukkha. translates to suffering. It's a pretty poor translation into the English language because suffering sounds like heavy, And life is filled with that. But it's also filled with discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, things that just don't go our way. Right? Who here hates mayonnaise? So you go to, I haven't picked on you yet. What's your name in the back?
DJ.
DJ. So you go to order a sandwich, right, at the deli. Yeah? What do you tell them?
No mayonnaise.
No mayonnaise. You get the sandwich, there's mayonnaise on it. How do you feel? Every time. And how do you feel when the mayonnaise comes on there?
Suffering.
Suffering. Heavy, traumatic, There's death and loss, and then there's mayo on your sandwich. To some, it's equal. So this is also dukkha. I always want people, especially you, to understand that when you read life is suffering, it sounds so miserable. Life includes suffering, death, loss, trauma, all that stuff. But it's also mayonnaise on a sandwich, the temperature not being what you like, people saying things you don't like, the person cut you off, your coffee wasn't made the right way, all those little simple things, that is also dukkha. And we experience these every day of our lives. The second thing he taught is called the three poisons, the cause of our dukkha, of our discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. And this is greed, or craving, anger, and ignorance. So we always want more. We're never happy with what we have, right? Anyone here have an iPhone? What number? 16. I didn't even know they had a 16, right? Apparently the 15 didn't work, the 12, the 11 didn't work. So whatever iPhone you had, for the most part, it works just fine. But they came out with a new one and they gave you a new deal. So we're constantly wanting more. And that can be in every aspect of our lives, in many aspects of our lives, I should say. Right? The second one is anger. We just don't like the way things are. And what are we often most angry at? Ourselves. That's why he's in the front row, right? Ourselves. And the third one is ignorance. It doesn't mean you're dumb. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It means you're ignoring reality, right? You have a perception of the world, yes? You have a perception of yourself, yes? Are those correct? Or are they just your perceptions? So we are lost in our perceptions. This is the illusion that we're stuck in. We create a story about ourselves. We tell that same story 1,000,000 times. And we begin to believe that story. And because we tell that story and we stick to it, we don't think we're good enough. We don't think we're this enough. We don't think we're that enough. And we keep telling people, all our friends, all our family, all our therapists, right? And we buy that story. This is the ignorance. So the practice of overcoming greed is to practice generosity. Go help people. The Buddha taught the greatest form of generosity. It's called dana. The greatest form of dana is to give the dharma. Not like a dharma talk. Dharma is teachings of the Buddha. But to give loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. That's the best thing you can give. But where does that giving have to start? Yourself, right? So practice giving to yourself and to others. The second, we overcome anger with compassion, right? Find ways to have compassion towards self and others. And the third one, overcoming ignorance, is with wisdom. Often people ask, how do you define ultimate wisdom? The Buddha praised Subhuti, one of his disciples, for giving a discourse on wisdom, right? He asked him to sit down and talk about wisdom. Subhuti sat down and said, absolutely nothing. And the Buddha patted him on the back, so to speak, and said, good job, right? So for me, wisdom isn't about what is the most wise thing I can do. Anyone in here ever done anything really stupid?
Yeah.
Do you know, for the most part, when you're doing things that are really, by stupid, I mean just harmful. Harmful to self or harmful to others. Sure, sometimes we kind of get, we're not sure. But for the most part, when we're about to do something, before, during, or after, harmful to self and others, we usually know. So instead of trying to figure out what is ultimate wisdom, all those things that you're doing to harm yourself and others, do those less. And that by default is greater wisdom. This is the second noble truth. The third thing he says is, there's an ending of suffering, liberation, nirvana, freedom from suffering, right? And the fourth is the path. This is called the Eightfold Path. Working on having right views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. All of that's on Google for free, right? Just Google Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, stay on the first 2 pages, and you're good to go. But what this is addressing is this is our karma. This is our actions. One of the biggest misunderstandings in Buddhism is the word karma in a Western culture. We think karma often is what? What goes around, comes around. That's a very selfish view of karma, because what that makes karma about is us. Karma literally means action. We generate karma 3 ways: body, speech, mind. What we think, what we say, and what we do. So what the Buddha taught was be mindful of your karma, meaning, coming back to mindfulness, be aware. And I probably will answer your question about mindfulness at some point, but this is part of it, right? Be aware of, be mindful of what you think, what you say, and what you do. That's your karma. It's what you're giving. It's like shooting pool. You hit the cue ball into the rack, the white went into the rack. Our entire lives, we are that cue ball. Every person, place, and thing we come in contact with, we leave a mark, we leave an imprint. So be mindful and aware of what we think, what we say, and what we do, because that has a huge impact on the world around you, right? So these are kind of the fundamental teachings, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. Mindfulness is a piece of that, right? If you look at the Eightfold Path, I ran through them quickly, but having correct or right views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. It's number 7 on the list. What do you think most people who come into Buddhist stuff want to do? They just want to meditate, right? Because if they meditate, then of course, all your problems are going to go away if you meditate, right? So mindfulness is learning to become aware of your thoughts, of your words, and of your actions. Again, going back to my original story, you could mindfully harm people, you could mindfully steal stuff. But you have to have an awareness of the moral and ethical behavior behind your actions. Is that, again, you're brand new, just scratching the surface, so just giving you an idea of kind of where mindfulness plays into Buddhism. Super important. But most important about mindfulness is to be mindful of what? Yourself. And how much fun is that? And that's the thing most people are trying to run away from. Most people are trying to escape themselves. That's why we turn to everything we turn to as an escape, right? Some healthy escapes, some unhealthy escapes. We don't have enough time to go into all your escapes tonight, right? We're only here for an hour. But the idea is become mindful of why you're needing to escape. Whatever you turn to as an escape. The problem isn't the thing you're turning to. The problem is why are you turning to it, right? So become aware of why we turn to things. And usually that's rooted in the greed, the anger, right? The depression, the sadness, the anxiety. Why are those things arising? Address those things and the need to escape falls away. So, what else?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
so when you get to a point where you've explored yourself, you kind of found all these things and these pains and this suffering and this discomfort and where it comes from, and you've done all this work and you have it all in front of you, and you get to the point where it's like, I don't know what to do with it. You know what I mean? Like how can practicing, I'll call it, within those noble truths or the eightfold path,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, how can that help me with, you already spoke to the anger because that's a big part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you need to deal with all this anger, but it's like there's so much stuff here that I am aware of,
Mm-hmm.
But now what? You know what I mean? Like there's so much to do with it, and it's like, what's next?
Or there's nothing to do with it. I get it, right? As I often say, half the people here are in therapy. Half the people here are therapists. And half of the therapists are in therapy, right? So this Buddhist practice let me say this first. Therapy is important, critical. If you're in therapy, if you're on meds, keep them, stay on them, don't abandon them. But Buddhism is not therapy. What you just described is kind of this Western mindset of therapy. Let's get out all our childhood trauma, and let's put it all on a table, and let's look at it, and let's solve it, and let's understand it, and let's talk to the 8-year-old child, right? Somehow I've never been in therapy. I don't know how I managed that, but, for me, I began to practice and recognize that all of the anger that I grew up with, all the torture I used to put people through, all the ways that I treated people which were horrible, you know how much I can do about that now? Nothing. I don't need to put it out on a table and do anything with it. I need to recognize, coming back to Buddhist practices, my master always said, when you do things that harm people, 3 steps. 1, recognize that what you did harmed somebody, and it wasn't in line with these teachings. Now, this is going to take you years. This is not like 6 weeks and then you got it, right? For most people, you'll be in therapy a long time. But Buddhist practice is not therapy, but I'll get to that even more. My master always said 3 things. When you recognize what you've done has harmed somebody, the first thing to do is recognize that what you've done was not in line with these teachings, as I was starting to say. Meaning, what you did was not generous, it was not loving, it was not kind, it was not compassionate, it was filled with greed, it was anger, it was all that kind of stuff. Because when we do things that harm people and ourselves, well, let me just say this, when we do things that harm others, who are we focused on, typically?
Us.
Us. It's all about us. I got to get what I want. That's why I'm harming someone else. Because I need what I want, and therefore somebody else got harmed. So recognize the first step is that what we did to harm somebody was we were focused on us. The second thing is to apologize, if it's relevant. Meaning if you broke somebody's heart 30 years ago, they probably don't want to hear from you anymore. Whatever you did to somebody a long time ago, if there's someone still in your life and it makes sense and you can apologize. But if not, then find somebody, a friend, family, somebody you know and love. Apologize genuinely and sincerely to that person about whatever you did. Right? So you own that apology. And the third thing is the vow to never do it again. And move on with your life. Like literally, and again, please take this with a grain of salt, so to speak. People will spend their entire lives and endless amounts of money in therapy telling their therapists every problem they've ever had. Does that fix things? It gets shit off your chest. But does that fix anything? Recognize what you did. It's done. Create a life. If I spend every single day talking about everything I've done in the past that harmed myself and harm others, I would spend every single day the rest of my life telling people about everything that I've done to harm myself and harm others, and therefore I'm not creating anything new. I'm still stuck telling myself that story. Again, I'm planting seeds, and this stuff will take you a while, but there's a practice in Buddhism called non-self. This doesn't mean we don't exist. It doesn't mean we're not here. It just means that we exist completely differently from how we perceive ourselves to be. So Buddhist teachings are, in essence, trying to get us to understand that we're stuck in a story. We have a construct in our mind about how we think the world should be and how we think we should be. And we spend our entire lives defending that. And Buddhist practice is living in the present moment and shattering the story. Just create moving forward. This is not a simple answer. This is something for you to practice generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. This is called the 6 Paramitas in Buddhism. 6 practices of an enlightened being. Generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. Practice those 6 things every day for the next 3 years. And then you will answer those questions. I cannot be more serious about this. I mean, I've been at this practice every single day for, 22 years? And you keep going. Because you'll be just as miserable and depressed tomorrow, 6 months from now, or 3 years from now if you don't change something, right? But you have to be patient. We're so used to taking some course and learning something, and the book says read this page and everything will be fine. No. The most important thing we need to become mindful and aware of is the suffering that we have, and know that we don't have to stay there. And again, I'm a big fan of therapy, stay in therapy, but therapy also keeps you in your suffering. It creates space every time, twice a week, where you can talk about all your problems and just live them over and over and over again. So, what else?
Just curious on that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if Buddha had brokenness. He was so isolated that when he went out, he saw brokenness in the world and that upset him.
Yeah.
Right? But
Yes.
and when you've worked with people in jails and stuff like that, that there's a type of brokenness from trauma in childhood, that how do you get them to a point of like, listen, we're all broken, you have to acknowledge this, just like what you're saying, the path is to do good things.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of get to where brokenness doesn't affect them like it did before. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, and you've asked questions like this before, obviously based on populations of people you're working with, as I'm guessing, I think first and foremost, even in that word, I think we have, as a practice, we have to be very careful about the words and labels that we put on people because, and I get it. I mean, I've been in that, this idea of you're broken. When you're broken, then we must fix you. To me, Buddhist practice is not about being broken and having to fix anything. It's kind of irrelevant, but also I think really beautiful, and I always forget the name of it, but there's a Japanese practice of where they take like a shattered plate, for example. What's it called?
Kintsugi.
One at a time. You both said that like a little bit. I'll go ahead.
Harmonize with me.
You go, man.
Kintsugi.
Kintsugi. Yeah. So it's a beautiful, the practice where you take like a broken plate and with like gold or whatever, kind of a glue, you seal it. And it's supposed to show that the beauty is in the brokenness. It keeps it together. But I still think this idea of saying you're broken, you need to be fixed. It's like your question. We'll spend our entire lives thinking we're broken and then we need to be fixed and then we die. I just have never been a fan personally or even looking at Buddhism of this idea that you're broken. Why are we broken? We've had experiences that were traumatic, as you pointed out. We've had painful experiences. And we're angry about them. So, work on cultivating compassion. I mean, and as you know, I've talked about 20-something years working in prisons. And very rarely, if ever, have I, adult and juvenile, have I met somebody that had a deeper level of anger than I had when I was 15 years old. And to me, the greatest practice through Buddhism was cultivate compassion and send as much love and kindness and compassion into the world as humanly possible. And that is the practice, the big statue behind me. Some of this Buddhist stuff you'll like to learn, right? This is Kuan Yin, the big statue in the middle. Her name means hearer of the world's cries. So she hears all the suffering in the world and then pours out compassion. She holds often, or pouring out in this version, a vase of compassion. So instead of, for me as a practice, instead of saying like, hey, you're broken, let's fix you. Well, you're just angry. So the Buddha's medicine for anger is compassion. When you do wonderful, happy, good things for others, how do you feel? Good. Well, do that more. It's not that complicated. But people aren't ready for that. They want to stick in, well, no, I have to fix myself first. I have to fix my brokenness before I go help other people. No. Go help other people. That's what fixes you. When I started the prison work, I remember being so miserable and depressed. This was 2003. But if I went in there, all of a sudden, I'd walk out of there 2 hours later, and I felt like I was the lucky one. That I benefited because I felt so great from helping these people. Helping people changes your life. And then you feel better. And when you feel better, you stop making stupid choices. Really simple. But people don't want to just do it. They want to continue to analyze it, investigate it, and try to understand it, and argue with it, and debate it. Like, you're not broken. You just need to do good stuff. And everybody can do good stuff. What else? Yeah.
In the past, I used to find myself being stuck in the same story. This, somebody's fault, my parents, wife, whatever. And I was always stuck, and I noticed that sometimes I had to break out of that and make a new story for myself. And it's still there. I have to work at it. About practicing gratitude. And not always, sometimes I don't wake up feeling like gratitude.
Sure.
I just have to work at it. But I do look back from what you're saying, and I was always stuck in that story, and I really broke out of it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in that trauma anymore.
Right.
I want to move on.
Right. And the, gratitude is really just such a beautiful place to be. And it's not easy for many, But taking a couple minutes each morning or each night or both and learning to find gratitude for one or two or three things in your life is beautiful, because as you're saying, coming out of that story, if you've been telling yourself a story about yourself for 30 years or however long, changing that story is not, it's like you said, it's not easy. And even as you said, sometimes you find yourself thinking about, I'm not, and you've heard me talk about this before, but just to point out for anyone who's new, I'm not a fan of just like pretending things didn't happen and ignoring them. They happened. And I want to be able to reflect on it in a healthy way so I stay motivated and inspired to not repeat those same things again. But to be able to look at things we've done in the past without anger and hatred towards self. And that's where the gratitude is so critical. And if you're sitting here, in this room right now, every one of you has at least three things that you can be grateful for. And the question is, how often do you think about those things? So most of us don't sit around all day long thinking about how grateful we are for what we have. We spend time thinking about all the things we don't have, or all the things we want, or all the things we don't like. And that's just a matter. And that's why the meditation practice, the concentration, coming back to the Eightfold Path, mindfulness, concentration, the last step is concentration. That's where the concentration is the meditation. It's training the mind. Mindfulness is an awareness. Concentration is meditation. And the concentration is very simple. If you're focused on the present moment, could be your breath, could be a shoe, could be a bottle of water. If you're focused on one thing, what are you not focused on? Everything else. When you focus on everything else, how does that tend to make you feel? Miserable, overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, all those things. So the practice of meditation is an opportunity to learn to just find gratitude and appreciation for sitting and breathing and being alive. Because the fact that you're sitting and breathing and alive means anything can happen. What else?
Valentine's. What does Buddhism say about love and the heart?
About love and the heart? They're important. Yeah. I mean, in Buddhism is what's called the four Brahma Viharas, the four foundations of mindfulness. And they are loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And I think love is in all four of those, right? I mean, loving kindness, and that literally has love in it, but practicing loving kindness towards self and others. Compassion, again, that's the Bodhisattva practice of Kuan Yin. It's just to pour compassion towards yourself and out into the world, always towards yourself first. So I think most importantly with love and compassion, and in not just our culture, but in many cultures, we can get so wrapped up in this kind of idea of love for others, when very often it's not even really love. It's just some weird, twisted, controlling manipulation. But love is actually freedom. And loving others is actually freedom. Someone asked about, this was cute, a few years ago there was we get a lot of other religious schools, high school and colleges that will come here to observe different religious programs. And so there was a college class a few years ago that came from another religion. And somebody asked a question, and she said, I heard Buddhists can't love their mother because they practice non-attachment, and that means you can't love your mother. And so we all got a big kick out of that. And so what I shared with this individual, thankfully, because of what they were being taught about Buddhism, those terrible Buddhists can't love their mother. Like, that's literally what they were being taught, is that Buddhists don't love their mother. And so I introduced the teaching of non-attachment, which non-attachment doesn't mean you don't care. It's not a severing, it's not a cutting off, it's not disconnected. Non-attached is actually endless, boundless love for things and people and places how they are, without being attached to the expectation or the control or the manipulation or wanting any sort of outcome. but appreciating and loving people for who and how they are, with all their what we would call ups and downs and goods and bads and flaws and all that kind of stuff. So non-attachment ultimately is love. But coming back to the four Brahma Viharas, the student was really grateful to hear that answer, and then showed up here a couple years later to learn more, which was great. And I had been referencing her for years, and then she finally showed up, and I was like, "You're her." Anyway, so loving kindness, compassion, joy is the third foundation of mindfulness, and to find joy in everything in life, even in the pain, even in the suffering. It doesn't mean that we like pain or we like suffering, but there was the tragic incident a few weeks back with the crash with the helicopter and the plane, and someone was talking about how to deal with that kind of sadness. That they thought that Buddhism, the goal of Buddhism was to end suffering, and therefore you couldn't feel sad as if that was bad or wrong. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, if you're sad, what does that actually mean? You care. That you love, you have a heart. So sadness is painful, it's not fun, but it's a beautiful reflection of love. So having joy in each moment, obviously not celebrating things like that, but finding joy in the fact that every opportunity is a chance to pour more love into the world, to find joy within the madness. And then equanimity. For me, equanimity really is kind of finding a balance of not allowing everything to just throw you off your path. Things will happen each day that you like and that you don't like, and kind of becoming a boulder as the waves crash, as opposed to a leaf or a pebble. And I think that you have to love and appreciate all of life to be able to kind of be that boulder, because the waves are going to crash. No matter how much Buddhist stuff you learn and do and practice, the waves are going to keep crashing on you every day the rest of your life. And can you still stay balanced and love that part of life? So, yeah.
So what is equanimity?
Say again?
What is equanimity?
Equanimity, to me, equanimity is just allowing to not be so swayed up and down. Think of a roller coaster, right? We love the high of a roller. Well, if you love roller coasters, right? It's like the rush up and then the crashing down. And many people with their lives, it's like this big rush and then the crash, the big rush and then the crash. Equanimity in Buddhist practice to me is like the kiddie ride at Disneyland. It's not fun, it's not exciting, it's very slow, but nobody gets hurt. It's just kind of slow little ride in a circle. I mean, I'm sure somebody got hurt, they jumped off, who knows. But equanimity is like the kiddie ride at Disneyland. Yeah.
Did you address that when I asked you a few weeks ago about that life would seem right now very bleak, and you said something about trying to keep ourselves balanced?
Probably. I mean, I don't remember what I said 10 minutes ago, if you want me to say what I said weeks ago. But I'll close with this thought. I think that the balance, equanimity is a little bit different than balance. Equanimity is really just the ability to take the highs and lows of life and not get thrown off course so much. But I think that, applying that to your life to find balance and for me, the last thing I'll say with Buddhist teachings is the middle path. Really important, and that really addresses, finding balance in your life and to look at your life and see where you have extremes, whatever it is, right? The Buddha didn't say this is the middle path, right? It's important for you to understand where are you out of balance, right? If you have 50 shirts, you probably survive with 30. And you know what that means? 20 people get shirts that don't have shirts. If you have 40 pairs of shoes, you're probably fine with 20 pairs of shoes. And that means 20 people who don't have shoes now have shoes, right? Whatever it is, with everything in our life, with people and places and things. I mean, think about all the food that we buy, order, and then just throw it away. And go to a restaurant and just look around, it's like there's so much food just wasted. Maybe order less, maybe eat less, or maybe actually eat what you ordered. So much waste in our lives. Again, with all the stuff. I mean, for the most part, we may gain or lose a little bit of weight, so we have to adjust for that. But for the most part, everyone in this room probably, I'm guessing, has enough clothes to last you the rest of your life. Does that mean you're going to stop buying clothes? No. Because new fall fashion is going to come out and tell you what you should wear. You know? And if your shirt doesn't match your belt, and that doesn't match your tie, and that doesn't match your hair color, you don't look good. And therefore you must consume. So this is unplugging from all of that. If you really want to learn about Buddhism, The Matrix, Fight Club, and Groundhog Day, those 3 movies, and you're good to go.
At the same time.
At the same time. With the 3 TVs that you have purchased.
But you only have 4.
We'll join palms, we'll close on that. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, before you all head out, our host Hazel has a few announcements for us. And while Hazel's coming up, we are looking for another Tuesday night host. So you get to open up at 6:30, you get to close at about 8:20, and do what Hazel's about to do. So if you think you can handle this, and you usually come on Tuesday nights and want to help out, we could use some other help. Thanks,
It's really fun. Hello. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it, then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.